Hello Paul, we've got the transmission out of your 94 Chevy pickup. This is what it looks like when it's all apart. I'll go over some things that we found on the inside of the transmission with you, and Eric or Amanda will contact you with the different cost estimates. So we'll start with the pan. If you look at the pan, you can see all that black goop, so all this black stuff, that's clutch material or band material. And then on top of the magnet, we have quite a bit of metal sitting on top of there as well. So you can see that's really quite a bit of metal. That's 2 or 3 times the normal amount there. But the big thing is there should be none of this black stuff. So, you know, like that black stuff down there, that's clutch material, that's bad. That tells us right away that there's things that are burnt and there's no fixing that in the vehicle. So we'll start with the pump. The pump itself, we haven't taken it apart yet to look, but you can see how the torque converter is going to engage into this inner gear, and you see when we turn this how the vanes are going to collapse and squeeze out the oil. These are not known to be bad, but we do have to take this apart and clean it and check our clearances, but right now we think the pump is going to be okay. Somebody has worked on this transmission before and there's been some mistakes. One of them is this is a early style pump gasket, and there's over by the vent there's a baffle piece missing, but this pump gasket was only used up until about 84 and a half, and anything about 1985 and up used the other style. So it's a mistake somebody has made that I don't think really hurt too much, but it's not something you wouldn't normally do that. As I said, this is the early gasket. This is going to be our band that comes on for second gear and fourth. If we look here, you can see there's no more material in some areas, and the whole thing is black. So that band is going to wrap around this drum right here. You can see how hot this has gotten. What's going to happen here is this surface, instead of being nice and flat, with this amount of heat, we're going to fully expect it to be dished like this. So what will end up happening is the edges of the band, when we wrap this around, it'll be the edges of the band contacting first, and we need the whole surface of the band to contact. So this band is no good, of course, and this drum is no good. And like I said, you can see some of the materials missing off the end of the band, and that would be why we have no second gear there. On the separator plate, we can see we've got a check ball lodged in the separator plate. If you look at the little hole by the check ball, that is going to be where our orifice is. And what's happened here is this ball, when the oil goes in one direction, the ball is going to seat up against the plate, and then the oil will go through this little hole. But when the oil comes in from the other side, what's supposed to happen is this ball would unseat. So I just pushed the ball out. So the ball would unseat, and oil is going to flow through that big hole and the little hole. So that obviously is a hydraulic problem that needs to be addressed. This is just a pressure control solenoid screen, so it's all sucked flat. That's a white nylon material, so pretty much looks like that filter there, but you can see how it's all plugged up with clutch material. On our rear planetary, this is hard to do with one hand, but the pinion gears, we're going to try to rock them back and forth, and what's happening is we can see some movement on the gear, and what's happening is there's needles that are, there's a pin and then there's needles all around it, and this gear, because we can rock a little bit back and forth, the needles are worn into the pin. So if we don't address that, we're going to have problems down the road, so of course we're going to need to address that. Front planetary, it looks okay. Our Torringtons look okay. We do have one that's coming apart, but you know, there's no actual brittling or pitting on those bearings that we can see at this point. This is our one-way clutch. It makes it so that this race here will turn in one direction and lock the other. So we look for wear on these peanut-shaped elements. They look okay, so at this point we think that's fine. This is our low reverse clutch pack. And the problem here is there's been an assembly error. So you can see we've got a wave plate here, then we've got a bottom steel plate, then there's a friction, a steel, a friction, a steel, a friction, a steel, friction, steel, and there should have been a fifth one that goes between this steel plate and this edge of the center support, and probably because of that you can see how we got only 1, 2, 3, 4. If we look at the lining here, this is closer to what it should look like, kind of a dark green lining, but when we look at these ones you can see how they're blackened. So basically somebody left out one of those frictions. This one is our overrun clutch here. You can see the hot spots. That's from slippage. So this clutch has been slipping a little bit. This is our forward clutch. It's going to come on for all the forward gears. It actually looks okay. We don't see anything wrong with that. So that clutch has not been slipping. This one is our 3/4 clutch. Comes on for third and fourth. There is an assembly error. It looks as if this bottom plate wasn't lined up properly. You can see how it might be hard to see it with the camera, but it's dished. It's not flat, and the teeth have been damaged. So we'll get a side view of those teeth. They're hard to see with this camera, but those teeth are damaged, and that's going to be most likely from the installation. The other thing that was missing on the 4L60E version of the transmission, there should have been 5 load release springs inside this clutch pack, and they're not there, so somebody's left them out. And on a 4L60, which is the 87 and 92 version, you can do that, but when it's 93 and up, it's recommended to leave those pieces in there. So we're going to replace, put those pieces back in there. This is our sun shell, and this design sun shell, it's prone to having problems in the splined area here. So if we look at the splines, so this area here where the splines are, there's a sun gear that's going to go inside of that. So you can see the splines on that gear, and they're going to go like that. And sometimes this will detach from this hub here, will detach off of there. And this style here has a little bit of a radius edge here, so it probably won't break off, but this one is going to be a style that these teeth can actually strip out, and then this gear now won't be held at all. So that's something that on a recondition, we replace this with the latest GM drum, and what they've done is they've got the radius there, but they also have hardened the splines here, so we don't have them strip and they don't break, so they're much better pieces. So. On the reverse input clutch here, there's been a little bit of discoloration, so just a little bit of slippage, but not really that bad. When we're doing a recondition, we would replace all of these friction pieces. Some of them are no good, like of course this band is no good. Even on a repair, we're going to have to replace this drum because, like I said, I think it's going to be dished. But these clutches are going to have to be replaced because they're damaged. We would replace these clutches. And the only clutch that we might not replace is going to be this forward clutch because there's no damage to it on the repair. On a recondition, we replace it every time. Inside the torque converter, there's also a clutch, so we would replace that whenever we're doing a recondition as well. So that's pretty much what we found inside the transmission. I guess I should talk about the valve body a little bit. So on our valve body, we've got a pressure control solenoid here, and we've got a couple of shift solenoids. They're not really prone to problems. This pressure control solenoid do have some problems. On a recondition, we'd normally replace that. And then over here, we have a TCC solenoid. That's going to be our solenoid to actually engage it. And basically, that's not really prone to problems, but we'd actually test that, and then if it tests fine, we would normally reuse it, but sometimes they don't test well, and then of course we have to replace it at that point. So that's basically what we found on the inside. So now you know what the inside of the transmission on your vehicle looks like. Thanks.